The origin of abstract and concrete objects. Where do these terms come from? Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer, tech support. It said they're coming out Tuesday. Close that thing up finally. I have wanted to know for the longest time where these terms came from: abstract, concrete objects. Turns out, so I've been going down this little travails down to the classical teachings of logic and all this formulas, because I got on a debate kick with Andrew Wilson with his course. I took his course and I was like, oh, okay, I need to learn more about the classic stuff because I've been doing all this computer stuff. And I successfully avoided all the philosophy and goofy. There's a lot of goofy stuff in there, but so when I first encountered C++, when I was started getting into Android programming, they threw the Java on me. I was a C programmer at the time. I had a lot of this guy, the people that were teaching it, this guy, the guys who are teaching were not C programmers. They didn't even know what the hell I was talking about. Their Java seems like Java was their first language, and they didn't really. And I asked them, "Where are these terms? Abstract, kind of concrete. Why are you using these very strange phrases? You're like mixing metaphors. Like abstract is like this category thing, and or an artistic thing, or like a generalized concept thing. And then you have this concrete. Why are you using the word concrete here? That's like a building material. Like, do you mean like a specific? Do you mean like abstract is specific? It'll be. You're like, no, it's you don't understand. There's like no understand. It's like, well, I finally where there's been a chain of like definitions of these words, and I realized when I saw this video, that's where these guys, all these object oriented C++ simula guys, they were all mathematicians, a lot of them, and they of course learned logic and philosophy back at those times when they were developing these things and these terms, and this is where it came from. So I'm just gonna play this video, maybe talk it through a little bit. But I was like, this is like put together, like, oh, it's because there's this whole uh, um class of like education and thought that goes back to antiquity that uses these terms. Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we are going to be looking at the difference between abstract objects and concrete objects. Now, in metaphysics, philosophers often claim that all objects are divided into two categories, abstract objects and concrete objects.
And that's why one of the things I asked them, I was like, why are these just these two distinct categories? Why are this and not other ones? So this is just the way the language are. Well, it's because it's coming from this idea. You have this general class of things, and then the actual physical instantiation of them, and they just took that same idea, which is what this guy's gonna explain, and just used it in the computer terms. And they kind of skipped over. It's like, yeah, we got this from metaphysics and classical Greek logic. It's like, okay, all right, man.
Objects, though many philosophers may say that only concrete objects exist. They also generally agree as to which
Right.
objects fall into each category, if they're the kind of philosophers that claim that both categories
Or computer scientists, by the way, is same stuff.
exist. However, they do disagree as to exactly what makes specific objects concrete and others abstract, and may
Okay,
disagree on
as
some
well.
borderline cases,
Yeah, okay.
and whether or not, of course, that abstract
Right. And this is where what are you gonna instantiate, and what needs to be like kept generalized. What is your interface? What is your actual object? Here we go.
objects even
Or
exist.
your class.
Right? In this video, we're going to look at the difference between abstract and concrete objects, some of the different definitions, and some of the positions which deny that abstract objects exist. So let's take a look. Because the examples are a little bit less controversial than
And then they use the word class in here too. It's like, okay, this is where you're getting it from. Why didn't anybody, when I asked this question, ever mention any of this? It's because they didn't know it's a failure of
We're going
academia.
to start there, because if you don't understand what abstract and
I went
concrete
to
objects
school
are,
for 5 years, and none of it. They never mentioned any of this stuff. Now, I did avoid philosophy. I was trying to just go for math and get the math I needed to get to computer science so I could graduate because I was broke. I was so poor, and I was just trying to get that, and eventually I dropped out and had to come back and do it by correspondence. But I got it eventually. But it's just they didn't mention any of this stuff,
the examples probably will be more explicit.
and the people I asked this question to also didn't know. It's like, what is going on? Failure
than any of the
of
various definitions.
academia.
So we have abstract objects and concrete objects. An abstract object might be something like the game of golf, not even a particular game of golf, but golf in general, as an abstract object. Whereas a concrete object might be a singular golf ball. An abstract object might be the English language, while a
Right.
concrete object would be a physical dictionary. Hopefully, you're getting a little bit of a sense of what we're doing here. The game of golf,
Right.
the English
They,
language,
they,
those
they
are
a
abstract. Well, the
concept,
golf
general idea of the thing, and then an actual implementation of the thing. So this is where they're getting this thing, these ideas
ball or a
from.
dictionary
And nobody, I'm just so surprised that this. I've asked so many people about this, and they just like, I've never heard of this before,
or concrete. The proposition
which
expressed
makes sense because they're all trying to avoid philosophy. It seems like.
by the cat is on the mat. Remember that propositions are different than the content of the sentences in a particular language.
Well, I mean, this is the idea of the cat being on the mat. Like, if the cat was on the mat, then the cat being on the mat. Okay, it's like, okay.
Well, the physical sentence
it's pedantic a little,
would be concrete.
but again, it's
Watch
philosophy.
my video on truth bearers for more on exactly what propositions are. The class of all objects with four toes. If we don't claim that classes are just identical to all of their members, then a class is a separate abstract.
So this is where we're getting all that class stuff here from too. Of all objects, this is the terminology they're using. They're deriving it from this classical, ancient, Western, mathematical, logical, philosophical branch. It's almost like mystical as well. It's also metaphysical because this is all philosophy.
Object. And so if we consider a class as a separate object, we're probably going to consider it as an abstract object. While each and every member of that class, those physical objects that exist in that class, that all have four toes, each of those are going to be concrete objects. And finally, Sartre's Les Mouches, which is a play written by Jean-Paul Sartre. The play itself, not a physical copy of the play, not someone reading the play, but the play itself is an abstract object. While my copy of Sartre's Les Mouches would be
right.
concrete.
This is so this is their class and implementation. Your abstract class is just an implementation of some certain part of it. This is where they're getting it from.
Object. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of the distinction between abstract
and
concrete objects. So abstract objects might therefore be defined as objects which are not present in time or space. They might also be defined as objects which do not interact causally with the world. And they might even be defined as being neither mental nor able to be sensed. These are all different ways that people define abstract
objects.
Right,
they're general idea, conceptual, right. And that is kind of how they're supposed to be used in these class hierarchy library when you're building these class hierarchies, which are supposed to be shallow. People got away from that. And they're just like, we're going to build extendable software using extending the class hierarchies. Oh, man, what a mess. That's where the Android stuff we lost it there. But from that lesson, right, we learned, composition's better. That's why we have composition, compose. Okay.
But hopefully most of those definitions are going to map well onto each other, and most of what we get out of those different definitions is going to be similar. Each of these views, of course, has its proponents and its detractors. And as with many definitions in philosophy, when engaging in debate on other subjects that are outside of the specific debate on exactly how we should define abstract objects, it's more important to simply explain what you mean when you say abstract objects. For example, if you're writing a paper on some other topic
when you're writing software, it's so crazy that I've talked to so many people, they don't know any of this. And they use it in this very odd way. And it's very like computer programmery way versus this conceptual modeling way, which is I think the way they was originally intended. And this is why they use these words for this conceptual modeling.
Metaphysics, and you're using the term abstract objects, being clear which definition you're using can be really important. It's more important to do that than to engage in kind of a semantic debate about the true meaning of the word, or in a paper to just assume that everyone is a fan of your definition of the word and not one of the other definitions out there.
Exactly. Because that's a lot. Anyway, there is no this debate stuff. It's at the end of the day, it's what we agree on. So if we agree on, this is why it's in the debate context. It's always. This philosophy always has this debate context part of it because there is argumentation and you're trying to explain things. But at the end of the day, there's no proving any of this stuff. It's just tools to model conceptions that we can agree on so we can move forward towards a goal. You're never there's this conscience. This is one of the things I don't like about the philosophical peoples because they're always having this like debate mindset. I gotta beat you or don't run away from the argument. It's like, well, you're not being very expressive in your explanations, and as opposed to just asking questions and then gotchas and therefores and non sequiturs. And it's like, no, man, that's not what this is for. This is for agreement, so we can work together towards a goal. And this is just a way of of structuring thought as well as software programs in a way so we can agree on things so it makes sense to us who are trying to get this thing done.
Generally, the denotations will overlap, but it's best to be clear on how you're defining it. Now, concrete objects are just going to be the other side of that coin. Most philosophers claim that abstract and concrete are jointly exhaustive of all the possibilities of what an object can be, but not all of them do.
See, that's why this is where the being exhaustible. I think that's the trick that the that this line of thinking is trying to prevent, like, through all cases of all things. And that's where it's like when this meets the real world of software, actually with humans, it gets real tricky and not so easy. And it's not just a debate, it's actually proving it by providing value to your customers that they find valuable enough to make it so you can run your operations at a profit so you can keep going and grow. It's not rocket science. That's really the result of it. Not this debate. I'm going to win, and nobody really wins. I got bad feelings, and I'm going to prove it next time. And all that stuff is just that part I do not like. I mean, I sometimes watching it because, like, people get beat up, and they obviously if there's moves on the table and they miss them. Okay, it's kind of funny, but all right, let's keep going.
An object is not abstract,
Missing
then it's
the
going to be
point.
concrete, and if an object is not concrete, it's probably going to be abstract. Some philosophers, such as nominalists about abstract objects, will claim that the only objects which exist are concrete objects. If you want more on this,
Well, what do you mean exist, right? So that's all that definition stuff, right? It's just like, and we can get in a when the debate crowd gets into controversy, like, what do you mean exist? It's like, okay, look, man, this is where you, as a software developer, we're going to use this as a different thing too, so we can have an understanding about the problem and the solution space, so it matches up, so everyone has an easy time of providing the maximum value to the customer so we can agree on things, not debate down what the terms mean. We're gonna agree on the terms because we're working together. Together, this is like they never mentioned this part of this as one of the reasons why we have these philosophical tools like abstract and all this other stuff is so we can work together. And they never mention that. It's always just like, I'm gonna debate you and I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna own you in a debate. I'm gonna use a syllogism and an axiom. It's like, stop.
position, check out my video on nominalism, which
I mean,
goes
it's
into both nominalism
funny, but it's not useful in an environment where we want to get shit done.
about abstract objects and nominalism about universals.
All right, yeah, okay. So that's my little video saying where this stuff came from, and I've asked this question, but nobody knows, nobody's heard of this. Like, and all of a sudden it's just okay. I'm going this other thing. Is like, there it is. That's where you guys are getting it from. Okay. You didn't really make it up. You're just mining an old ancient trope that's was probably beat into your head when you were a little kid because you had a classical education with all the Greek and the Latin and the rhetoric and the logic and the grammar. Trivium. All right. Give me a like and subscribe, drop a comment, and we'll talk to you soon.